Jeep engineers spent a little bit of extra time on your truck to give it some features that you probably don't even know about. They're not even necessarily in the manual. I'm going to hit on a couple of those today. However it is you feel about the Jeep's intake, we can all agree though it's well engineered, it was designed by the manufacturer, and it does provide plenty of air for this engine unmodified. And so a lot of times first thing we'll want to do is upgrade an air box, but this air box is so large, the media inside is so large that it does actually provide a decent amount based on some of the research you can do on the internet. It is a very small amount of change if you do edit or modify this. I do believe what they've done to allow this air into this engine and to breathe is not only do you have the near the top of the fender here, you have a huge inlet because when you close the hood, you do get a little bit of a restriction. But if you look down inside here, there's a large amount of space and air. And not only is the air coming up through this area, but what Jeep had done, and if you dig around in your Jeep, there is an inlet right here in your fender. If you look, there's a void right here. There's air being forced into this tube. It goes up and around and then makes its way up under the airbox. If you remove this bolt, the 4 bolts on the airbox and the band clamp, you can remove this and you'll find that there's actually a secondary tube under here that allows your Jeep to get cold air from the very front of the Jeep as it's going down the highway. Another interesting feature, I believe, for the Jeep's electrical system, not only do you get a larger alternator and a larger battery with the tow package, they've also allowed you room in the engine compartment with even the 700 amp battery. There's still room for a larger truck, for the next size up truck battery. Inside here, you can see that there's a clip in this area. If you take out the battery and unbolt it, you slide your battery out, there is a removable clip right here that slides out, and then your entire battery can be pulled out. You can sell it, use it for another vehicle, maybe use it for a dual battery. But what you can do is run the next size truck battery up from this one. They don't include one from the factory because this is the larger 700 amp battery. But what is interesting about that is that that little clip is there to be removed to allow you to run a lot more capacity in this same location. Jeep did something else for our trucks. The headers that come down off the passenger side of the engine is straight and then tees and collects just past the transmission on the driver's side. That tube is very long because it has to cross over the vehicle to reach the driver's side and then to go back to the exhaust and also to the resonators. What they've done is they've come down off the driver's side and almost made like a French horn shape. They went to great lengths to, no pun intended, to give us a length of pipe that matched the passenger side. That extra length of pipe and the pulses of the exhaust are then matched to the opposite side, almost tuning it like a to the resonance and to the frequency of the pulses of the exhaust coming out. That is very unique in the sense that I've seen most vehicles wouldn't even give that a thought. That shows me that Jeep cared that much about getting the performance right of this 3.6 liter. Once the collector does go to the back, it also opens up into a larger pipe, and there's not a whole lot of gains to be made in the exhaust system other than sound. Just like the intake that I showed you, it breathes well for this size engine. Whether you love it or hate it, the stop start on our Jeep actually includes a lot of extra engineering that I would like to expand on. So the stop start includes 2 batteries. If you look at this power cable right on top of your battery, it gives you a larger one and a smaller one. The smaller one is on the passenger side behind the tire. When you pull up the fender and look up, now I have my fender already pulled up for this video. You can see the secondary battery is right here inside this plastic housing. Also, the Jeep has a beefier starter. It already has what they call the Big 3 done, so there's much larger gauge wires throughout the vehicle, and then grounded to the chassis in multiple places. And then the vehicle gives you additional grounding points throughout the vehicle. So you can use these for winches, for much higher power capacity devices. It gives you an extra open port here. I use this for an amplifier. There's other things you can use it for. And then on the box, there are multiple points where you can add accessories to these fuse locations. Now these fuses are actually for the sub systems in this electrical box, but if you are savvy, you can actually use those to your benefit. Don't go messing with those unless you are absolutely sure what you're wiring up. In addition to the electrical system that's beefed up, the starter, the battery, and other components under the engine, the stop start also has a feature where if you unplug your hood prop or your hood switch, it will then allow you to defeat that permanently and you don't have to keep turning it off and on. Now, I think that's a band-aid approach. I have a programmer. I just disabled it in the programmer. Something else I think Jeep did well was they added a skid plate to some of the components that could get beat up because they're, electronic, or they're at the lowest point of the vehicle. There's a skid plate, actually a decent sized one, on the axle disconnect on the front axle. They help you get that extra mileage. There's also a skid plate here. Additionally to those skid plates, which I found interesting, is that you get one for your transfer case and your transmission. So here's your transmission. You have this bar here that makes its way between it and the transmission. It could definitely be beefed up, but there is some protection there. You do get a skid plate as well for your transfer case. And then there's an entire transfer case going down, or excuse me, there's an entire skid system going all the way down the Jeep, down the gas tank. Now, obviously, that just makes good sense because that's your flammable liquids. But I think they did a great job at tucking these. In the Wrangler, you would get what they called the shovel, and it would sit 4 or 6 inches below the frame rails, where they did a tummy tuck, what we used to call them on the TJs, where here, the entire vehicle is almost flat up against the railing. I found that that they took the time to think of that, because I know in the TJ and in the YJ and other vehicles, you have this large chunk of metal hanging down well below the rest of the chassis. They did a great job, I believe, for light off-roading, just to go ahead and give you something that protected the vehicle down here. It's those little touches, I believe, that really Fiat Chrysler has done on the trucks to include beefing a lot of things up to give you that little bit of protection. Something that I don't think in Jeep in the past had really considered, or if they did, it was a cost-cutting measure. So I'm just scratching the surface of some of the engineering that Jeep put into the new Gladiator. There are many more things in here that are in the manual, and you can read about them in there. The functionality of the Jeep, the lower 4.7 gear ratio for the first gear makes this thing a great crawler with the automatic. There's the functionality of the automatic to be able to go to manual 1 through 4 when you're in low range. All of those things in the manual obviously hit on a lot of the engineering aspects of the truck. But some of those items that you saw in my video don't necessarily make it to a manual, or really people appreciate it because it is just kind of something that's not seen, or we think of it as a nuisance, but in essence it's a blessing because it beefs up some part of the Jeep that we were going to modify anyway. So now we have a better electrical system. The features are there that we may have had to purchase in the past, things that the Jeep had on previous models not really considered, clearances and the way that the overall vehicle is fit and finish is years beyond my TJ and even my JK Unlimited. And I find that really, I think Fiat Chrysler has stepped up their game. The engine also has it's a 3.6, but in the cars in Chrysler, they're making 300 horsepower. In the Jeeps, they've detuned them a little bit, maybe to pick up some lower end torque with a different cam, obviously, to bring them to 285 horsepower. But those engines are so well made. They're all aluminum blocks. They breathe. The intakes, the exhaust are all well designed. There's just a lot of things in the Jeep you don't have to spend money on if you are, minded more for the trail. You want to put your money in the suspensions and the things that matter to you most. Another thing is, there was so much talk in the TJ forums years ago on Jeep forum about low center of gravity. I mean, it became an argument almost every time you turn around about how low you could get your Jeep with the biggest tire you could fit under it. You can literally put a 37-inch tire on a Rubicon if you bump stopped it correctly, and it wouldn't tuck much, but it would drop plenty. The truck and the JL, the fenders are so big on these trucks. Even a Sport can fit a 35 without a lift. Those are just unheard of items. A couple other things. The Jeep has 32 spline shafts in the Sport that the Gladiator does. And I thought that was, fantastic from a perspective of where you could just put lockers in it, because the Rubicon already has 32 splines as well. That is a step up from the years past of Dana 44s having 27, 30, 31 splines and an 8.8. Whatever it is that you wanted to do, this truck has already done it for you and gives you plenty of room to upgrade and to continue to do incredible things with it. I think Fiat Chrysler knocked it out of the park. I do this for fun. I go over the engineering and the designs because I think it's fascinating. I'm not paid to say that, and just having 3 Jeeps, and this being my 2 Rubicons and my 4th Jeep that has a removable top is, a Jeep is a removable top to me. This being the Gladiator, I've always wanted a truck, and I've always wanted a Wrangler, but I could, always had to have 2. And so this thing fits the bill for so many people. It is a bit big for some trails, but I believe that it's absolutely capable of still handling those things. A long time ago, when I was one of the first people to get a JK Rubicon Unlimited, I was made fun of on the trail because they're like, that thing's so big, it's got such a large wheelbase. I was one of the first people in my area to have one, and when I actually went to use it off-road, it impressed everyone because they thought, well, it's too much of a hog to fit on the trail. That is not the case. Now you have all of these great videos that show the immense amount of time that people put in their JKs and their 4-doors, and they have turned them into their family off-road lifestyle. I think our truck is now getting there. I think the JT now gives you that option to have a truck, to have the capability of a Jeep. Your approach angles are still great. They're just like a Wrangler. However, you do have to worry about the angles in the rear because of the overhang of the truck. Small price to pay with some armor, and then you're on your way. Jeep has done a great job of finding little ways to engineer this truck and to design it for a real avid off-road user. So thank you, Fiat Chrysler. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more content. I'm not monetized, and I am not sponsored by any means, but I do these videos for fun, and I really like to see this channel take off. I have so much content that I have in my mind that I'd like to start throwing together, and you guys are helping me by motivating me that you care about seeing these things, and I will keep making these videos. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.